I want to tell you about a website that I don't... Let me just show you. Okay, I want to tell you about a site that I'm not sure should exist. Right now, this camera is streaming on a site called Insecam. A site that compiles internet-connected cameras from all over the world that either don't have a password or where the owner hasn't changed the default password on the camera. I want to understand, how does this work? What does all this mean for the privacy of the people that live here? And could I maybe get this camera turned off? I first heard about Insecam not on the internet, but in a book. In Virtual Mass, Antoine Martin compiled screenshots of Christian Mass live streams during the COVID-19 pandemic, all of which he found on insecam.org. When I went to see the site for myself, I was shocked. Most of these streams felt relatively harmless, and some felt intentionally public. So dog owners could check in on their pets at daycare, and surfers could check the waves before heading to the beach. Tennis players could check how busy the courts were. But others felt like watching something you shouldn't be allowed to see. Offices, back rooms, even inside homes. These feeds are organized by city, country, time zone, type of place, and camera manufacturer. And after all of those tabs, all the way on the right, there's an FAQ section. In it, the site's administrator states that they only feature feeds from network surveillance security cameras. So what does that mean? These video feeds all come from IP cameras, like this. IP cameras are different from other kinds of security cameras because an IP camera's feed can be transmitted over the internet so that you can conveniently view it on a computer or a phone as long as you have an internet connection. But that convenience can be exploited because if you don't set up a password on a new IP camera, that live feed isn't just accessible to you, but to anyone who scrapes the internet for unprotected cameras. Anyone can do that with scanners like ZMap, an open source tool that can scan the entire public internet for open camera feeds in less than an hour. A site like Insecam does this kind of scan continuously, and it does it for multiple different internet protocols to catch multiple different kinds of IP cameras. This, Insecam's FAQ section argues, isn't hacking because it's accessing something that doesn't have password protection in the first place, less like breaking into a house and more like peeping into windows that were already open. The FAQ makes one other point too, that if you see your camera on the site and you want it taken down, all you have to do is send the site administrator an email, and they'll remove it. But they urge you to remember it'll still technically be available to anyone on the internet who uses a security scanner, and that the only way to really make it private is to set up a password. Passwords, of course, are a whole nother story. You can have a good password, but if it's for a website that has bad security, your information can still fall into the hands of data brokers. Making videos for this channel, I'm constantly looking up other people's names and information, and it makes me very aware of all of the stuff that's there about me. Oh geez. That's where the sponsor of this video, Aura, can help. It's a service that identifies data brokers selling your information and submits opt-out requests for you. If you try out Aura for a few weeks, you will actually stop seeing your information on sites like this. They're continuously monitoring for this stuff. They also offer up to $5 million in identity theft protection, and the Aura app has a VPN with over 100 virtual locations. It's a whole bunch of great features bundled into one. You can go to my link at aura.com/Christophe to try 14 days for free. It's not always easy to keep yourself safe on the internet, but fortunately, Aura can do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. Okay, that's it. Let's get back to Insecam. This didn't just feel like a website. It felt like a statement. Exposing the risks of poor security by putting the consequences on display for anyone to see. I sent an email to that address asking for an interview and waited to hear back. In the meantime, I did a quick domain information search and saw that the site is registered in Russia and that it's been around since at least 2014. I wanted to see what people said about it back then. So it looks like September 2014 was the first time this was really covered by the Daily Mail. They wrote about how home hackers can spy on you and your children with your webcam. It's pretty scary. And then 2 weeks later, there's an Estonian newspaper that wrote, "See if your security camera footage is visible on the internet." And then in a little over a month, Insecam is in headlines all over the world.
There is a news site that's getting a lot of attention. It's a bit creepy.
Russians may be spying on you through them. There's a website that's called Insecam.
Has hacked nearly 5,000 cameras in the U.S. alone.
You know the default password, they know the default password, and simply logging in like they were you.
By late November 2014, UK officials were urging Russian authorities to take down the site. On the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, you can see a snapshot of what happened next. The administrator took all of the cameras offline and replaced them with this. Programmer is looking for a good remote job. But within a week, the cameras were back online, with one notable change. On the front page, Insecam's administrator claims that they now filtered out all cameras that invaded anyone's private life. And, more than 10 years later, the site's still online. But even if the most invasive cameras were actually filtered out, the ones I saw on Insecam still felt like they could be an invasion of privacy. I started to wonder if there were hundreds, maybe thousands of cameras on Insecam today, and Insecam had been around for over 10 years, how many people's lives had been streamed like live TV, totally unaware that they were being watched. So I went looking for answers in every academic paper that mentioned the word Insecam. In one paper from 2018, a team of researchers scraped the history records of all IP cameras that ever streamed on Insecam. And they estimated that over 500,000 camera feeds had been on Insecam since it launched, with an average of 215 new cameras added every day. So that's how many cameras were being watched, but what about how many people were watching? That's when another study from Japan caught my eye. Researchers set up IP cameras without passwords as honeypots, essentially bait designed to attract attackers to learn about their behavior. And they measured how many people were watching. On the third day that one of these unsecured cameras was running, Insecam posted it, and traffic skyrocketed. The researchers argued that a large amount of cyber peeping occurs because of the Insecam website, basically suggesting that the site creates an outlet for an audience that wouldn't otherwise be watching this stuff. I still wanted to get a better idea of how big a deal all of this really was. Obviously, being watched without your consent is a big deal in and of itself, but I wanted to see what a cybersecurity expert might make of all of this. So I went looking for one, and I got in touch with Emmanouil Vasilomanolakis, an associate professor at the Technical University of Denmark.
I think the mindset should be that the moment you put an IP camera out on the internet, there is a chance that someone is watching this feed, basically. So even if this is, let's say it's a camera that shows something that you don't care if people want to see, it does matter if your camera is insecure, because on the one hand we have the people who want to snoop in and want to see random video feeds, I guess, from the internet. But on the other hand, you also have people who want to basically get admin access to the device so that they can use this device and its computational power or its network capabilities to usually perform other type of attacks. If I manage to get access, for instance, to, 1 million IP cameras, then I can command these IP cameras to attack a website, for instance, by performing what we call distributed denial of service attacks.
In a distributed denial of service attack, an attacker uses a bunch of internet-connected devices to overwhelm a server or network, like taking control of a bunch of cars to create a traffic jam or sending a bunch of people into a store until regular customers can't get through the door.
So all these unsecured devices around the world can kind of become ammunition to drive an attack on one specific thing.
Exactly, yeah. So we see attacks coming from all sorts of devices. Printer from Brazil, and then a router from France, and a camera from Russia, who's actually at the same time attacking one of our devices. All types of devices that are connected to the internet are basically able to attack other devices.
Emmanouil explains that a lot of these cameras wind up on Insecam simply because they're old. Cameras that are 10, 15, 20 years old with outdated security, maybe even no firmware updates because their manufacturers don't exist anymore. His team has called these kinds of devices digital ghost ships.
So the moment you put a device on the internet, you are responsible for taking care of it, right? So that it doesn't attack other people.
Talking to Emmanouil, I realized that part of the problem here was something that I hadn't thought about at all. It wasn't just about individual privacy or individual cameras. It was about being a responsible part of the broader ecosystem of the internet. Even the cameras that nobody really cared about or that didn't violate anybody's privacy were still adding fuel to that fire. I became obsessed with this idea of tracking somebody down who was accidentally live streaming on Insecam and helping them take their camera down. And I wanted to see if anyone had already done that. So I turned to the front page of the internet.
Reddit was full of posts from people trying to identify via crowdsourcing where a camera on Insecam was located so that they could help its owners take it offline. Redditors had helped take down cameras at a restaurant in Norfolk, Virginia, where you could see customers posing in front of an aquarium, a bar in Victoria, Canada, where you could watch staff on break, even a pub in Dublin, Ireland, where you could read people's PIN numbers at the cash register.
It felt like something that could only happen on the internet. People around the world working in collaboration, all just to look out for one another. And I wanted to try to do it too.
I started with the cameras listed in the city where I live. Even though these cameras are tagged by location, the site warns that the coordinates are very approximate and have accuracy in hundreds of miles. So you have to rely on clues to geolocate them. Some cameras felt like they didn't have enough clues to track down at all, and others were mislabeled, like this one, which is supposedly in New York City, but if we look at the mountains, plus Tink's Superior Auto Parts and Renegade Lounge nearby, we're actually looking at Beaver, Utah. There's the same angle, and there's the camera. Then I found this one, and I looked for clues. We can see EROY over the door, which tells us that it's Leroy Street. But we can also see that it's a dead end, so we're looking for where Leroy Street ends. Drop into Street View, there's the same location, and there's the camera. Then I found this one, tagged as New York City. I tried reverse image searches and a lot of Googling and roaming around Street View, and for a while it felt impossible to find. But then I took a closer look. So we know it's a one-way street, which doesn't help much, but judging by how many yellow cabs were going by, we could guess it's probably in Manhattan. And judging by the relatively short building here and open skies here, we know that we're not looking at a part of the city full of skyscrapers. There's a shop next door with a sign that I couldn't quite make out. Orb lights across the street made me think we're looking at a hotel. There are basically no trees on the block, and white lines clearly marking a bike lane. It was enough clues that, going street by street, we could eventually find a match. Of all the cameras that were supposedly in New York City, these were the two cameras that I could confirm actually were. And because they were both residential buildings, I wanted to let the people there know. I used a site called Who Owns What to find the name of their landlords and management companies, and I reached out.
The mailbox is full and cannot accept new messages at this time. Please try again.
This building's management never got back to me, but this one's did. And as of this video publishing, I'm still working with them to help them take this video offline. I'm still not sure this site should exist. The site claims to be about raising awareness, but unless you know about Insecam and spend the time to find your camera on there, or you have a friend or a well-meaning stranger who does that for you, you might never know that your camera is public. I'm not convinced that Insecam on its own increases awareness about IP camera security, but I do believe that conversations about Insecam, sort of like the one that we're having here, can. For manufacturers, that means making better security the default on IP cameras, like requiring users to choose a unique new password immediately on setup. And for the rest of us, that means asking, do you really need an IP camera? Do you need to be able to see the feed anytime, anywhere, or would some other kind of camera or an alarm system do the job just fine? And if you really do, make sure to buy from a reputable manufacturer, preferably a newer model, so that you can get support and updates when you need them. And, of course, set a strong password, not admin1234, something strong. By having that conversation about Insecam, I think the benefits of raising awareness can outweigh the harms done by this website in the first place. And more IP cameras all around the world that people don't want to be public can look less like this and more like this. Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 4 of Tunnel Vision. If you want to see more stories like this about diving deep down internet rabbit holes, you should subscribe. Obviously, I could not geolocate every single camera that I saw on Insecam while I was reporting the story, but I do want to open this up to all of you. So if there is a camera that you saw in this video or that you see in Insecam in general that you can geolocate, please do drop a mention of it in the comments or get in touch. And I'll do my best to get in touch with the person that owns it, the business owner, the homeowner. Okay, that's it. See you next time.